My sister threw my business laptop into the pool just because I said no to lending her $12,000. My dad called me selfish. I left without a word. But the next day, I called a lawyer, and that's when my sister realized what it meant to lose everything. My name's Sophia Grant, I'm 38, and last Sunday, my sister showed me exactly how far she'd go when I said no. We were at my parents' house in Phoenix, everyone half distracted by food and small talk. Then she walked over, grabbed my open laptop, and gave me this lazy smirk. "You really won't lend me 12 grand?" She asked like it was no big deal. Before I could even respond, she turned and threw it into the pool. The splash was louder than any words. My entire business, all my client campaigns, months of work, just gone under the water. My sister laughed and said, "Oops. I guess that's what happens when you don't help your family." I waited for someone to say something. Yell at her. Tell her she was crazy. But instead, my dad just shrugged, looked at me, and said, "Well, that's the price you pay for shutting out your own sister." No one asked if I was okay. No one asked about the laptop that pays all my bills. I didn't scream. Didn't cry. Didn't give them the scene they expected. I just stepped up to the edge, reached into the freezing water, pulled my laptop out, and watched the screen flicker and die in my hands. I set it down on the concrete, water dripping off the keys, and smiled in a way that even scared me. I didn't argue. I dried my hands, grabbed my car keys, and left without saying a word. That night, sitting alone in my townhouse, I made some quiet decisions. At 7 a.m. the next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing with my sister's name. That's when I knew she finally realized what it meant to lose something. Have you ever had your own family disregard everything you've worked for and make you feel like it's all your fault? Stay until the end of this story to see what betrayal in a family truly costs. Growing up, I was always the one doing everything right. Stayed out of trouble, good grades, went to Arizona State for marketing, built a career that paid my bills. By 32, I'd quit my agency job, started my own digital marketing business, and was making more money than I'd ever dreamed. I bought a small townhouse in Phoenix, paid off my student loans, and finally felt in control of my life. My sister, Chloe, was the complete opposite. She's 3 years older and, according to my parents, the more creative one. She dropped out of community college after a year, bounced between bartending, waitressing, and working for a friend's clothing line before deciding to become a full-time jewelry maker and influencer. Translation: she lived off my parents, or in the condo my dad put in my name for tax reasons. And she always needed a little extra help. When I started making real money, it felt like something flipped in my family. Suddenly, I wasn't just Sophia. I was the safety net. It started small. My mom would say, "Your sister's phone got turned off again. Can you just add her to your plan? It's easier if it's all in your name." So I did. Then, Aunt Susan needed her line added to the family plan too. Naturally, I was the one paying the whole bill. Then came the subscriptions. Chloe needed Netflix while making jewelry. Amazon Prime for supplies. My Canva Pro account, so she could make posts for her non-existent business. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. But it kept growing. Chloe couldn't get approved for a car, so my dad called and asked me to co-sign for a used Jeep Cherokee. He said it was an investment in your sister's future. I hesitated, but he piled it on thick. "You're doing so well, honey. Chloe just needs a little boost." When Chloe couldn't make payments on the Jeep, I ended up not just co-signing, but paying most of the loan. Then there was the condo in Tempe. It was technically mine. My parents transferred it to me for tax reasons and because, as my dad put it, "You're the responsible one." Chloe moved in temporarily to get on her feet. 4 years later, she was still there, not paying rent, not paying utilities, just treating it like an artist's loft while I dealt with property taxes and maintenance. And then there were the loans that weren't really loans. $4,500 for inventory. $2,200 for a camera. A few hundred here and there for vendor fees, branding courses, and so on. Every time, she promised to pay me back once her business took off. She never did. And every time I tried to say no, my parents would say, "She's just not like you, Sophia. You understand money, she doesn't." Family helps family. So when Chloe threw my laptop into the pool, it wasn't just about a broken machine. It was about years of quietly covering for her. Years of being called selfish when I even thought about saying no. That splash? It was the sound of my final awakening. You realize that the people you care about see you as a wallet first, and a person second. How do you ever go back to normal after that? That night, after leaving my parents' house, I drove home in total silence. No music, no podcasts. Just the sound of my own breathing and the hum of the highway. I walked into my townhouse, dropped my keys in the bowl by the door, and set the dead, waterlogged laptop on the kitchen counter like a body. I stared at it for a few minutes. If I let myself feel everything, I knew I'd either scream or shut down. So, I did what I always do. I opened my backup desktop, sat at my desk, and approached my whole life like a client project. I opened a blank document and typed a single line. What Chloe gets because of me. Then I started listing. Phone plan. Chloe, my parents, Aunt Susan, everything was in my name, on my bill. Chloe had streaming accounts on her TV, phone, tablet, and Amazon Prime. She used it more than I did. Her order history was full of craft supplies, and random impulse buys I didn't notice because I was too busy. She used my Canva Pro and other paid design tools to make logos and posts for a business that was more fantasy than reality. Then came the bigger stuff, the Jeep. I found the loan documents in my email. My name was on every page. The bank sent reminders. I paid the difference every time the loan was due to keep her car from being repossessed. The condo in Tempe. Property tax statements. Maintenance requests. Plumbing invoices. It was my place in every important way. But to her, it was just Chloe's condo where she lived for free. The more I looked, the sicker I felt. It wasn't that I'd been generous. I'd created an entire ecosystem for her. A car, a home, a phone, entertainment, business tools. All of it was because of me. And yet, to her, that wasn't enough to warrant a simple no. I scrolled through old messages from my parents. All those guilt trips from my parents. She's just not like you. They'd say. You know how your sister is. Don't make her feel like a burden, Lore. But the truth? She was a burden. And I'd been carrying her weight for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand on my own. Eventually, the anger shifted. It stopped being hot and loud, and instead, it felt cold and clean. I picked up my phone, dialed the cell provider, and confirmed my identity. I took a deep breath and told the representative, I want every line on this account except mine, effective tonight. They paused, asked if I was sure, and warned me the other lines would lose service immediately. That's the idea, I said. I logged into my streaming accounts, went to settings, and signed out of all devices. New passwords, long and ugly, ones I wouldn't accidentally share. I removed her email from my Amazon account, disabled the payment method she'd gotten too used to, and set up alerts for any new charges. Then I went to my email and searched for James Miller, an attorney a friend had recommended for real estate and family disputes. I filled out the contact form, hands shaking. I explained everything, my sister living in my condo for free, destroying my laptop after I refused to lend her $12,000, my parents pressuring me to keep funding her. 15 minutes later, he called. His voice was calm, practical, the kind of voice I needed right then. He asked about the condo, the loan, if there was a lease. There wasn't. Then she isn't a tenant, she's a guest. You can remove her. You just need to do it properly. He prepared a notice for me, told me to email it and send a certified letter the next day. Don't argue with her. Don't negotiate, just follow the process. I hung up, reopened my document, and stared at my list. For the first time, it didn't feel like obligations. It felt like exits. Every item on the list was a cord I could unplug. I went through the motions, making calls, resetting passwords, canceling services. Around 3 a.m., I leaned back, exhausted but clearer than I'd been in a long time. Chloe thought throwing my laptop into the pool was her punishment. She had no idea she was flipping a switch in my head. And by the time the sun came up, everything she had built on my back was about to collapse. I must have slept for an hour, maybe 2. My alarm went off at 7 a.m., and my phone was already buzzing in my hand. Missed calls and texts. Over and over, Chloe's name. Regular calls, FaceTime attempts. Text after text. Why isn't my phone working? Has anything happened to the plan? Answer me now. I watched the notifications stack up but didn't open any of them. A few minutes later, my mom's name popped up, then my dad's. I let their calls ring out too. It was almost funny, in a sick way. For years, I was terrified of disappointing them. Now, with everything cut off, they were panicking. Before sunrise, I made coffee, sat down at my desk, and opened the auto loan account. I'd quietly covered the balance, paid the reminders, and dealt with the delinquency notices to keep her Jeep from being repossessed. The document stared back at me. My chest tightened, but not from guilt. This time, it was sharp, focused, and angry. I called the lender, went through the security questions, and when the rep asked how she could assist, I said, "I'm a co-borrower on a vehicle that the other party is using without paying. I'd like to discuss repossession." There was a pause while she pulled up the file. "Is the car at your address?" she asked. "No." I told her, "It's at my condo in Tempe where my sister lives." I gave her the address, confirmed my name was on the title, and she explained the procedure. They could send a tow truck any time that day, as long as the car was in a public or accessible parking lot. I authorized the tow electronically while she was still on the phone. As I hung up, I imagined Chloe stumbling out in slippers, expecting to find her beloved Jeep, only to see an empty parking space. For the first time in a long time, I felt good. Balanced. The texts kept coming. "My phone is dead. What have you done? You'd better fix this. Did you cancel my line? Are you serious now?" I turned my phone face down and opened my credit card account. If canceling her phone plan and going after the car were cutting the obvious cords, this was digging into the roots. I scrolled through the statements, line by line, highlighting anything I didn't immediately recognize. Little charges, $35 here, $80 there. Random apps, boutique clothing sites I didn't know, and a bunch of movie rentals I hadn't ordered. When I added it all up, it came to just over $2,500. I remembered the day Chloe grabbed my wallet on her way out the door. "I'll just use your card to get Starbucks. My app's acting weird," she'd said, laughing. She came back with a drink and a pastry I hadn't asked for. I hadn't thought twice about it. She'd either memorized my numbers or taken a photo while I wasn't paying attention. I called the card company and told them I suspected a family member was making unauthorized charges. I read off the list. The agent asked if I wanted to report it as fraud and get a new card. "Yes," I replied without hesitation. "And I want her removed as an authorized user." We checked. She was still on the account. She was. I had agreed to let her be an authorized user once to help her build credit. We fixed it in less than a minute. As the fraud claim was filed, more messages came through on Wi-Fi. "Chloe, why is my card being declined? My Uber app shows the payment failed. You're insane. Do you know that?" Then, my dad called. I finished up at the bank. The agent told me the investigation might take some time but that the charges would be reversed temporarily while they reviewed. When we hung up, I finally checked my email. At the top was a message from James Miller with the subject, "Notice to vacate, draft attached." I clicked on it. The letter was brief, formal, and crystal clear. It said Chloe was living in my property without a lease, I was rescinding her permission to stay, and she had 30 days to leave. It had my name, my condo's address, and the legal steps I could take if she refused. All I had to do was sign and send it. I added my e-signature, took a deep breath, and emailed it to Chloe with one simple line. "Please see attachment." No explanations. No apologies. Then, following James' advice, I sent the letter certified mail to the condo address. Before I'd even finished scheduling the mailing, my phone started vibrating nonstop again. Chloe's texts had gone from confusion to full-blown outrage. "You're kicking me out. You can't do this. That place is mine too. You're ruining my life over a stupid laptop." I set my phone down and looked at my list from the night before. Most of the items were now crossed off. Her phone line? Gone. Streaming and subscriptions? Restricted. Credit cards? Limited. The Jeep was already on its way to the tow yard. The countdown for her free housing had officially begun. The sun started rising, and for the first time in forever, I felt like the bright Arizona blue sky was actually mine. Chloe thought she was punishing me when she threw my laptop into the pool. She had no idea that the real punishment was me waking up and realizing I wasn't pretending I owed her everything anymore. By the time the tow truck arrived at her condo, it was already too late for her to keep pretending nothing had changed. A few hours later, the fallout showed up at my front door. It was around 10 a.m. I was answering emails and trying to live a normal life when I heard someone pounding on my townhouse door so hard, the frames rattled. I didn't need to look to know who it was. "Open the damn door, Sophia," Chloe yelled, her voice cutting through the wood. My heart skipped, but my hands were steady. Instead of going to the door, I grabbed my phone, opened the camera, and started recording while walking toward the entrance. I didn't open it. I looked through the peephole and saw her pacing back and forth on my front step, like she was about to lose her mind. Her hair was a mess, tangled in a knot. She was still in leggings and an oversized sweatshirt, the same frantic look she gets when she knows she's losing control. "They took it," she screamed, kicking the door. "A tow truck just came and took my Jeep." "Sophia, my Jeep." She slapped the door with her flat hand. "I know you did it. Your stupid money, and your ridiculous power trips. Open the door and fix it." I cleared my throat and raised my voice just enough to be heard through the wood. "It's not your Jeep, Chloe. It's the bank's. And remember, my name is on that loan." There was a pause. Then she let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "So that's how it is? You cancel my phone, cut off my card, steal my car, and now what? Are they evicting me?" She thumped the door again. "You're doing all of this over a laptop, Sophia." "How about a laptop?" I didn't respond. She switched between screaming and hurling insults, calling me heartless, insane, and a control freak who just had to feel superior. At one point, she yelled, "You think you're better than everyone just because you know how to pay bills?" That almost made me laugh. Almost. I pressed the side button on my phone and dialed 911. With the recording still playing, I stepped back and spoke quietly to the dispatcher. I told her my sister was outside, banging on the door, refusing to leave, and that there had been property damage the day before. They told me to stay inside, lock the door, and wait for officers. When the squad car finally arrived, I watched from the window as the officer went straight to Chloe. There was a lot of pointing toward my house and a lot of yelling. Chloe's voice got louder as she ranted about family, betrayal, and how I was overreacting. A few minutes later, Officer Hayes knocked on my door. I opened it. She looked tired but kind, the kind of tired that says she's seen this situation a million times. I showed her the video, the texts, and explained what happened with the laptop and the money. She listened carefully, nodding slowly. When I finished, she said, "Legally, you've done everything right. She doesn't have the right to stay here if you tell her to leave. If she comes back and does this again, you should consider a restraining order. She's family, but that doesn't make her above the law." Behind her, Chloe stood on the sidewalk, arms crossed, red-faced with anger and humiliation. When the officer told her she had to leave and couldn't come knocking on my door again, Chloe yelled at her, "You're ruining my life, Sophia. You're ruining my life over some stupid electronics." I didn't step onto the porch. I just looked at her, calm as I could, and said, "No. I'm done funding it." As the police car drove away, my phone lit up again. It was my dad. I answered, mostly out of curiosity. He didn't even say hello. "What on earth are you thinking?" He snapped, "Your sister is hilarious. You took her car, phone, and place to live for one bad decision," he said. I felt my jaw tighten. "Dad, it's not a bad decision. She's been using my credit card without permission for months, over $2,500. She hasn't paid for the car in almost a year. She's been living in my condo for free for 4 years. And she destroyed my laptop because I refused to give her $12,000 more." There was a long pause. I could hear him breathe. "She said you offered. Then changed your mind. And now you're punishing her." I laughed, a short, humorless laugh. "Of course she did." I explained the fraud claim, the bank statements, and the eviction notice. I laid everything out. No sugarcoating. No sugarcoating. No apologies. On the other end of the line, I could hear my mom quietly crying, like she was sitting right next to him, phone on speaker. "Honey," she whispered, "she's your sister. She made a mistake. She just doesn't understand money like you do. You know how she is." I replied, flatly, "Yeah, I understand exactly how she is. You do too. You just don't want to admit it." Mom switched tactics, trying to make me feel guilty. She says she'll be on the street. She says you're throwing her away. Is that what you really want? I closed my eyes, took a breath, and said, "I want her to take responsibility for herself, for once. I'm not throwing her away. I just don't cushion the landing anymore." After I hung up, Aunt Susan started texting me long paragraphs. "Money comes and goes, but sisters last forever. Success has changed you. Don't forget who shared a bedroom with you." A few hours later, Chloe posted something on Facebook, ranting about greedy family members who steal cars, homes, and use money as a weapon. Friends weighed in, some blindly defending her. while others messaged me privately to check if I was okay. I didn't engage. Didn't start a public war with screenshots and proof, even though I could have easily. Instead, I reported her post for harassment, blocked a few loudmouths, and got back to work. And here's what I finally figured out: anyone who wants to see me as the villain will do so, no matter how many facts I throw at them. The people who knew me didn't need a slideshow to see the truth. That afternoon, while I sat at my desk, phone face down and email open, I realized something else. For the first time in my life, the loudest, most dramatic member of the family wasn't the one writing the story. I was. And despite how messy and painful that day was, part of me felt relieved. Because once you stop being the good daughter who's expected to keep everyone happy, there's a strange kind of freedom in letting others feel uncomfortable with the reality. 18 months later, I got an email from the court, buried between other notifications. Short. Dry. Just letting me know that Chloe had successfully completed her probation. Her community service hours were recorded, her payments were up to date. Legally, the whole mess was closed. Emotionally? Not so much. By then, my life had changed so much since she threw my laptop into the pool. I had a new MacBook. Upgraded my systems. Backed everything up in 3 locations. Tightened my client agreements. My business had grown steadily, not with flashy overnight success, but solidly. I had more referrals, stronger boundaries, and focus I didn't even know I was missing when half my energy was spent putting out Chloe-shaped fires. I had also created something I never thought I would have with my parents: an honest distance. I saw my mom a couple of times a month for coffee, just the two of us. We talked about lighter stuff, her garden, the book club she joined. Sometimes, the conversations got deeper. One afternoon, while sipping iced tea, she confessed that seeing Chloe in an orange vest picking up trash had broken something in her. Mom quietly said, not because she didn't deserve the consequences, but because I realized how many times we shielded her from them, and pushed them onto you instead. Dad came around, slowly. Like a big ship trying to turn in a narrow canal. He never gave me a big dramatic apology, but he stopped asking me to fix everything. When I told him I wasn't going to any big family events, he just nodded and said, I understand. No guilt trips. It was new. It was fragile. But it was real. As for Chloe, she became more of a rumor than an actual presence. I heard she moved back in with my parents for a bit, then into a small apartment with a roommate. I heard she was working in retail, clocking in and out like everyone else. I heard she stopped telling people she was going to blow up, and started saying, I'm just trying to keep my head above water. I didn't stalk her social media. I didn't ask for updates. When her name came up in conversation, I let others talk and kept my face neutral. I had made my choices. She was living with hers. The first time I actually saw her again, it wasn't at some big family summit. It was in the most ordinary place, at a grocery store. I was pushing my cart down the frozen foods aisle, trying to decide between 2 brands of dumplings, when I heard someone softly say my name. Sophia. I turned around. There she was. No dramatic eyeliner, no staged outfit. Just jeans. A faded t-shirt from a store I knew paid about $20 an hour, and a name badge clipped to her chest. She looked older. Not in a bad way, just less polished. There were faint lines around her eyes I didn't remember, and a tiredness in her shoulders that I recognized because I had carried it for years. For a second, neither of us said anything. We just stared at each other, both knowing there was a time we'd have shared a bedroom, clothes, secrets. And now, there was just this. She swallowed hard. I know I'm not supposed to bother you, she said, looking down. But I just wanted to say something, if that's okay? The restraining order had expired with her probation. She wasn't breaking any rules by standing there. I could have walked away. And part of me considered it. But another part, the one that had spent hours in therapy untangling our childhood, was curious. You can talk, I said carefully. I'm not promising anything, but you can talk. She nodded, eyes shining in a way I hadn't seen since we were kids. I'm sorry, she said. And there was no drama this time. No performance. For the laptop, for the money. For the way I used you. I told myself I deserved your help because we were family. Because you were doing better, and I was struggling. I made up all these stories in my head about you being selfish so I wouldn't have to face what I was doing. But I get it now. I know I stole from you. I know I scared you. I know I made you feel like you didn't matter unless you were fixing my life. I felt something twist in my chest. Anger. Grief. And a strange, unexpected hint of relief. I wasn't trying to make it easier for her, but I couldn't pretend this conversation didn't matter. You did. I said. Quiet. You did all of that. She nodded again, a tear slipping down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. Just let it fall. Probation sucked. She said with a humorless laugh. Community service sucked. Paying back every dollar sucked. But the worst part was realizing I wasn't as helpless as I made everyone believe. I just didn't want to grow up. It was easier to let you be the adult for both of us. We stood there in the frozen foods aisle, the hum of the freezers filling the silences. I'm not asking you to forgive me, she added quickly. I mean, if you ever do, that'd be great, but I understand if you can't. I just want you to know I get what I did, and I'm trying to change on my own. I took a deep breath, feeling all the weight of every year we spent sharing a bedroom, every holiday I'd missed, every time I wanted a sister but ended up with a parasite instead. I appreciate you saying that, I said. I'm glad you're taking responsibility. I really am. Her eyes flicked up to mine, full of hope for a second, then back down, cautious again. If we ever have a relationship again, I said, it'll be small, slow, and on very clear terms. I'm not going back to how things were. I won't lend you money, sign anything, or be your emergency plan. And I get to walk away the second it feels like you're slipping back into old patterns. No guilt trips, no speeches about family. It is. She flinched a little, but nodded. That's fair, she whispered. More than fair. We didn't hug. There was no dramatic music, no instant healing. We just stood there for a moment longer, two adults who'd finally been forced to grow up in very different ways. Then we went back to our carts. As I walked away, I realized something important. For the first time in my life, I wasn't defining myself by who I was to her. Not the savior, not the bank, not the villain in her sob story. Just me. Later, when I told my therapist about it, she smiled and said, "You did the hardest thing most people ever have to do. And if there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that family loyalty without boundaries isn't love." That, more than any court order or repossessed car, was the true form of vengeance. Not watching Chloe suffer, not having the last word, but refusing to return to the dynamic that nearly swallowed me whole. It's self-erasure. Saying yes until you have nothing left doesn't make you a good daughter or sister. It just makes you empty. People who truly love you don't ask you to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. Instead, they learn how to build their own fire, even if it takes longer and fails a few times. So, if you have your own Chloe in your life, someone who calls manipulation, love, and theft, helping themselves, I want you to know, you are allowed to stop, say no, and protect the life you worked for, even if those who benefited from your silence call you cruel for finally speaking up. Because, at the end of the day, the real punishment isn't losing access to someone else's money, car, or couch. The real punishment is waking up one morning and realizing the person you've been draining dry isn't willing to bleed for you anymore. And if you've been bleeding, you don't owe anyone an apology for finally choosing to heal.